Hi, welcome back to the Healing You Show. I'm Vanessa Harris and we're here with our host Gloria Lybecker. And today we are exploring worrying about being wrong. I got that wrong. I said it.
Oh no. Oh my gosh, what was that like, Vanessa, to get that wrong?
Especially when I'm actually pronouncing something. It's really, I find it kind of, I laugh at myself, but I don't enjoy saying things incorrectly. But yeah, it's a big thing, I think, and an interesting way to look at things, because I don't know that I was really aware of even worrying about being wrong until I looked at this heading. So what do you think does make this relevant, and how does it show up for people?
Yeah, well, I think there's quite a spectrum of how it's possible for it to show up. I think that for most of us, though, it probably goes way back to our childhood selves and our conditioning from our families and from our first school days, and where we were first starting to reach out and to develop relationships with others, and our experience of whether we were perceiving that we got it wrong. So I know for me, there's like a collapse that happens. There's a real shame kind of reaction. And probably because I was the youngest of 4 kids, and I always got it wrong. I mean, my siblings were so quick to let me know that I was wrong. But part of it too, then, for the others was like they were wanting to be able to get it right. They had maybe more experience at doing things and had developed more confidence. And so I think there's a lot of different factors. It can actually just be something that's running in the background and we're not consciously aware of it. But we're really, I think underneath it is the longing for acceptance.
Mm.
And when we're little, we can actually look outside of ourselves for that acceptance. We need to develop it inside of ourselves for self-acceptance. And yet to find that pathway, we need relationship with other to help us learn how to do that. Because we can't learn how to do that all by ourselves. And so I wonder what comes up for you hearing that.
So when you were talking about acceptance, that really struck a chord for me. When I'm guessing that even for people who may not have had experience in early childhood of being made wrong, or noticing that they were getting things wrong, or being shamed or feeling ashamed for being wrong, that any experience that where you have felt like you are not accepted or you've been rejected, that was the word that was coming up to me. You're rejected for being wrong, or you did something wrong. Like, it's not okay to make mistakes. It's not okay, especially in relationships. I'm guessing that could...
well, I'm sure that it kind of ups the ante if you are holding a position where others are watching. So we're giving an example of what we're doing. Like, I can remember as a child going up and they'd have these math games where you'd have to write the problem on the board and see who could solve it the fastest, you know? And so then whoever was slower, kids are not always very kind. And so, then there's those group dynamics of how that plays out and how we're perceived in the group. That can make a huge impact on us.
And even things, I'm just thinking about when someone makes a mistake or does something, and then you hear, I've heard parents say it, and I've probably heard myself say it when I'm really, really in a bad space. What's wrong with you?
Oh.
Like, or if someone's doing something that there's really just shocked me or hurt me, I've probably been guilty of saying those words. What's wrong with you? Why are you acting that way? And I know I've had it said to me. Sometimes people can be very, what's the word? It's very exact. you've done something wrong. That's it. You're gone.
Yeah. That can be
So
really a painful one to experience too then. So being able to stay relational. So when somebody shifts left on us, because it's a judgment, you've done something wrong, it's a judgment, then they're not actually staying in relationship with us to catch us when we have that collapse. I've also had the experience of being in a learning environment and having someone get really excited when we would explore to discover, which is a whole different way. What do you hypothesize is going to happen? What do you imagine might happen? I wonder what's going to happen. And when you use those types of words, it creates safety. It opens up brand new doors you didn't know were there. And then you can discover through your experience of what you would prefer to do next time. And you learn so much when you can't possibly get it wrong.
So what I'm hearing there is when you're not stuck in that loop of fear of being wrong, then you're open to more learning.
Well, then you can learn. Because if we're scared that we're going to get it wrong, we are not going to be able to be fully engaged. And so, especially in thinking about how we do connect with other beings, if we have that perception that people are looking at us like, they're going to just get it wrong. Or, oh, great, now they're up. It's like for all of us, whoever were chosen last, it's like, what's that like? It's like, I'm not enough. And that's a painful place to be. Because we all want to be able to contribute in life and be a contribution in life.
And that being chosen and acceptance. So I'm hearing that the worry about being wrong often brings up feelings of fear, in my experience, or anxiety even, because someone's going to judge me negatively, or so why is that so important? What's underneath that? That we're constantly wanting acceptance of others and needing?
Well, I'm imagining that we need to know that we are of value, that we are worthy of love. That we are enough as we are. There's something about that. I am enough as I am. I mean, to really say that and feel that and believe that, that's huge. That in itself. I'd invite people to come on out to the Healing You Sanctuary and walk around with Aragon and name that out loud and notice what happens. Because when we are able to really fully embody our authentic voice of who we are in the world, it transforms us at a cellular level. And when we are really believing the shadow qualities that may have been projected at us or imprinted upon us and telling us that we're someone that we're not, you can just feel that darkness. You can feel that smallness. Or it can actually make us mad and we're going to fight back and we'll prove who we are. And still it's not being really relational. But still the fighting energy, the movement there is going to be a healthier response for our system than the shrinking into isolation and immobilization. It's much more difficult to come out of that.
So when you say the shrinking into isolation, when someone perceives that they're wrong, is that around feelings of shame? Or so when you were also describing about being small, the word that was coming up that I was thinking of was shame, that feeling of shame that we get, which I was told once, it's different to just worrying about doing something wrong. It's about being wrong. Being wrong is different to just I did that wrong or I did something wrong.
Yeah.
Being wrong is kind of like I am a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
rather than I just made a mistake. And
Yeah.
it goes right down to our core of I'm not
That's who
accepting.
we are, who we believe we are perceived to be.
But
And depending on if we've had repeated experiences of being wrong, of being made wrong, you are wrong, you did that again, then that really impacts us for our own self-perception. And then we can begin to anticipate that. Uh-oh, it's coming up again. And we can actually project it into our own future because we just believe that's who we are now. And so it becomes like a belief system. And our beliefs actually drive our behaviors beneath our conscious awareness on very many subtle levels. And yet when we can slow everything down enough to be in relationship with ourselves, we can start to unpack that and bring in self-compassion. And most of the time, though, that is much easier to navigate when we have another being with us that really sees us for who we really are and believes in us.
So someone who's not enrolled in the story that you have, the perception about yourself that was told to you, and that somewhere along the line you believed or took on. Maybe I know there are stories that I've told myself in the past. I used to believe I was dumb when I was a child, and I was a kid who couldn't do any of the math and sat there with the test in front of me, wasn't at the board, but got pulled up because I didn't know how to do that particular equation or whatever it was, because I hadn't been taught. Missed so many, changing schools so many times. But there was a long time where I had this story that I'm dumb. I'm not very smart. And I just believe that to be the case.
Yeah. Well, and so one of the things I heard you say that would be key to my ears is that there are a lot of transitions that you had. You had to change schools quite often. For a child, that can be traumatic because you don't really get caught up. And when we change schools that many times, we can't really track what's going on.
There was no tracking to be done. The curriculum just wasn't consistent. It's not like in our country that you go from term 1 to term 2 and everyone's doing the same thing. It's like every school just does their own different thing.
Yeah.
So I look at it now and I understand that, but as a child, I didn't get it.
Oh, I didn't get it. My parents moved 3 times when I was in 2nd grade. And then I told my teacher in the 3rd school that I'm supposed to be in 5th grade, but I just keep getting held back in the same class. Because that's the way I was innocent. And my mom was so shocked. But I just thought, wow, that was a quick year. We went to a whole new place. They moved.
Right.
And I thought that I should be done with 2nd grade by now.
Yes, yeah. I've done that. I understand. Because why would you move in the middle of the year? So what happens in our system, it would either when we're young or when we're old and we're in a relationship and something happens, when we do get things wrong, what is the reaction? What's going on for us?
Well, for myself when I was little, if I got it wrong, it meant like what you had just shared. I'd think I was dumb or stupid, and there must not be any hope for me. A lost cause. And we can believe that about ourselves. As we grow and we mature, and hopefully we get to have other relationships that can impact us in ways that allow us to get to know ourselves anew, then we can actually take it in stride with curiosity and grace. But if we haven't been extended that curiosity and grace, we don't know how to do that for ourselves. We believe the judgments of others, and then we begin to judge ourselves. So we can actually develop a really savage inner critic that can be scathing. And And so I would want to be able to catch those voices and actually slow them down to translate them into what is the need that we weren't having caught for us in those moments. You know, to be held with curiosity and with warmth, for there to be exploration and discovery. I mean, I think that's a beautiful learning environment when you can actually have the ones who are facilitating the space have open hearts and actually be quite relational and curious. And actually, there was a beautiful video I saw one time where these little children were coming into the preschool, and the teacher would greet each one of them and just be so delighted to see them and name them by name each day as they came in. They were welcomed and grateful they were there. And what a difference that makes for each soul.
Mm.
We need to be welcomed as we are.
When you were describing that, being welcomed with curiosity and warmth and exploration, I just got a really strong image of my mother, because she used to sit there and watch us with this big grin on her face, no matter what we were doing. And there was never an expectation of getting it right. And she didn't really care if we made a mess. And if we pulled every blanket out of the cupboard to create some kind of cubby house, and, you know, then it fell down, it was like, oh, well, what can you do now to fix it? Or have you tried this? And we were allowed to make mistakes, because some people have said to me, oh, you just don't care about things. You don't care about other people's opinions, or you don't feel fear about public speaking, and you don't, your shame chip has been removed, is one of the things that, which isn't true. I do feel shame at times, but not probably about the same things as my friends. But I think it's that curiosity and warmth that I probably experienced. And being able to just explore and
discover.
Yeah.
When we can discover something ourselves, it's ours to keep. But if we're told about things all the time, then we haven't actually learned it for ourselves. So when we can actually have somebody that can ask us open-ended questions so that we are encouraged to explore and discover, we can retain that. And then we can actually model that too and pass that on to others.
Mm. And so when you're describing the open-ended questions and having the opportunity, I'm going back to thinking about a teaching environment, and sometimes I've seen people who just they just breathe when they get asked a question. Even if it's an open-ended question, there's this perception in their head, I think, that there's a right answer that is being looked for here. Like, rather than let's just explore this this topic and actually see what comes up, and then where things fit in and what our opinions and things are, especially in English. Although I think there is definitely a prescription that they're looking for. We want you to answer it this way. We want you to agree with the statement. I think my son's just got a subject like that. Explain why this book is the ultimate survival guide. And he said, it's not. It's just an appalling book. I can't stand it. And they told me if I don't agree with the statement, I won't get any marks. So as I'm saying that, so how do we work around that? How do we undo that patterning? How do we undo that? Because it has been taught so strongly.
Yeah, it's been learned. It's a learned, conditioned behavior to have. Some people I know, if you ask a direct question, they literally go blank inside and there's nothing there. And so to be able to have an environment, and also it can be very contextual. So depending on if it's in front of a group of others, it can heighten it so much rather than if it's just one-on-one. It depends on what's the relationship between dynamics. Relationship dynamics come into play really big. So because we could have it be in our personal life, or is it in my work life? Is it with extended family or just personal family? Is it with a group of friends, or is it with people you don't know super well yet? So all of those are going to be factors that are going to impact us depending on what our past experience has been. And so for myself, where I would go blank inside, I needed to start one-on-one to where I could actually have the courage to name it, and then to begin to explore what happens inside of me, what happened for me, and for that to actually matter, and for me to experience that my experience matters because of who I am. And it begins to then rebuild that solid foundation under myself, that I get to know myself in a new way. And I develop trust within myself that I can do this and it does matter. And now how do I feel? And so being able to be with somebody that knows how to hold that space is really important. And then we can start to create, we have like little pairs inside of ourselves with any relationship we have. And so then we start to build this strong relationship of trust, and I carry that other individual inside of me. And that begins that sense of security deep inside that we need.
Mm. So what I'm hearing there is how you can go through a process and support yourself. And what I was thinking about was how do you hold that space for somebody else? So when I'm tutoring adults and I'm asking them questions and they go into that freeze mode, how do I hold that container for them?
Well, so I want to set the container up first. When I know as a professional, when I want to have an agreement, and I want to be making sure that I'm checking in and that I'm getting consent to have the conversation. And for them to know that at any time that we can change the focus. So there's, depending on what the context again is, but when I'm doing somatic-based empathy processes, then I'm going to be really upfront about that it's somatically based. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to have you bring your attention into your body and notice what you notice. And it's a practice in order to begin to open up something that's not been opened before, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And that also then ties into what you were saying before about worrying about not knowing or not doing it right when you're young or having that experience, and how important it is to then have the experience of things being pitched at the correct level so that you have success. So that
yes,
as we're developing,
celebrated with.
Yes, rather than I'm going to put things that it's going to be too difficult for you, or it's beyond where your level of ability is. Mm-hmm. It's very important to meet that person exactly where they're at. Yes. And the context, you were saying the context is really important. So I think it comes back to the conversation we're having last week about time. Often it's under a time pressure. So the reality is we're probably trying to work in a situation that's under time pressure at too high a level, and it's nothing is actually serving that person. But maybe just acknowledging that, I think.
Yeah, well, and also to have a lot of grace in there. It's so important to have grace rather than judgment. And for there to be more a sense of expansiveness around it, of there's lots of ways. We don't have to be attached to one strategy for how we're going to navigate that territory. Then we can actually slow down and actually be present with what is other possibilities, because there's a zillion possibilities at every moment when we actually have the capacity to notice it. But if we're feeling anxious, if we're scared, it minimizes how much we can access. So we need to have an environment where we can feel safe. We can actually feel it in our viscera. Then we're going to actually notice something we didn't before.
Yeah. And I think that's what I observed with my daughter on the weekend, what you were describing there. She was really overwhelmed and upset about an English assignment that she had to write out. And she was expressing it and talking to me about her concerns and her fears, and I was just listening to her, saying, it sounds like there's just so many different aspects. You aren't sure about what we're down. And then I said, would you like some assistance with that? Yeah. Would you like some accompanying? Would you like me to look at it with you? Would it help? But then she never got me to do it. She actually went away and did the assignment. And I thought, wow, she just knocked it over herself. But I think she went through, and just by having that conversation and naming what she was worried about, that there's so
can
many,
make a huge difference.
I'm going to get it wrong. And just having that held, she had a visceral experience where she just shifted, and then she could go away by herself, and she didn't actually need me to look at it.
So it sounds like maybe that was some really good empathy. When we can get empathy, it can open us up to new possibilities. And because we've named our fear. And when we name our fear, it begins to allow us to actually be present in a new way. Yeah.
And so with empathy and around being wrong, I mean, I'm just sort of getting present to how this shows up with family and friends, because I'm thinking about mine. And it's almost sort of an odd concept, being wrong. Like, wrong according to who?
The culture.
Right.
The culture, whatever environment you're in, whether it's a faith-based community, whether it's an educational institution, whether it's a family gathering, each of those institutions have their own paradigm, I guess, of how they hold things. And it might be unspoken, but it's like right and wrong, it's so permeated in our culture. There's very few places that actually hold an open container of trust and acceptance, and they can translate.
And even in one-on-one relationships, I think the culture can dictate how we're supposed to operate, or we perceive that we're supposed to operate in that relationship. So some cultures value birthdays and anniversaries and those gifts and presents and things, and one person may or may not be aligned with that. I'm guessing that can cause a lot of conflict or
perception of it.
Wrongness. Sort of feeling, perception of wrongness and feelings of distrust and so why am I thinking about trust? Where does trust fit into this dynamic of worrying if I get something wrong?
Because if I have a foundation of trust, then I trust that I matter. My experience matters. There's nobody out to get me or belittle me. When I'm fearful that I'm going to get it wrong, I already have some kind of an experience internalized that I'm scanning my environment for, so that I don't ever do it wrong again, ever. So we probably have some unconscious contracts running. Yeah.
Okay.
And it can just become deeply embedded until we can develop awareness of it, when we can notice the pattern. Because when we can begin to notice the pattern, we can invite more curiosity in. And that can really make a big difference. It does for me.
And the warm curiosity can come from yourself.
Now that I've been accompanied like a zillion times, yes. I really needed a ton of empathy to get to that place where I am able to bring that warm curiosity into myself, even into places like, oh my goodness, this is coming up again. And instead of making it wrong, I actually know to hold that container really gently, but with precision at the same time. So we can find that sweet spot that's needing to arise for healing. Yeah.
And when I heard you just then saying about making it wrong, for some reason I just got the sense of being right. So instead of making myself wrong and then wanting to be right to fix my being wrong, and I realized that often it doesn't show up about worrying about being wrong. That's not how I perceive people, that they worry about being wrong. What I do perceive is that there are certain people in my life that are very, very concerned about being right.
And there can be different flavors for that too. There can be a very rigid, I am right, this is the way it is, and it will never change. And then there can be another, I need to get it right so that I don't draw attention to myself. And so those are really different flavors in my experience. And again, so it's unpacking, well, what need does it meet to get it right for each of those? And it could be really different for each of those, depending upon our life experience. It could meet the need for safety. It could meet the need for acceptance. It could meet the need for predictability. And predictability many times kind of contributes toward that felt sense of security or safety. Because then, we can relax because we think we know it.
We know what's coming. We know how it's going to work. And I can feel safe when I have things that are predictable.
Or when I get it right, well, then maybe I experience inclusion and belonging. Because I want to fit in. So our need to belong can really, we can surprise ourselves by what we might be willing to do in order to belong, when it really matters.
And so why is that so important to us as humans? Why is belonging such a powerful driver?
Well, because it's about relationship. We need relationship to survive, or not just survive, but to thrive. We need community for that. We were never intended to live in isolation or by ourselves.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We do tend to function much better when we actually pool our resources, connect with each other, act as community.
And so if we're really worried about being wrong, then there's that fear of exclusion, ostracization, being cast out.
And and that's actually I'm guessing that what comes up for me is Indigenous Australians. They talk about there was a practice of pointing the bone where the bone was pointed and you were excluded from the tribe, but you would literally die. But I think they would just go off on their own and die because they were on their own.
Yeah.
They didn't have the safety and security of the tribe.
Yeah, it's like the voodoo death. The belief is held so deeply that it plays itself out. There's nothing to live for anymore, right? And so, it's being ostracized.
So I'm getting a really strong sense now as to why it is such a big thing for people to worry about being right or being wrong. They're really the same thing, aren't they? They're just the reverse of each other. If I'm right, then I'm not wrong, and I don't want to be wrong, so I always need to be right.
But it's about being included. It's about being safe and secure. It's about contributing in community, and that your contribution matters, however it is, however you show up with it. I mean, for me, it's been really powerful in groups is like for people to have the felt experience of it's not possible to get it wrong. And when you know it's not possible to get it wrong, well, then what's possible? I mean, my goodness, there's so much that is possible. And it's just like expands the mind and the heart and the soul. There's limitless possibilities that are available to us then.
And I just want to name that that has definitely been my experience in working in groups with you, which is very different to other places that I have participated in any kind of self-exploration or self-development or professional development. That there's a real sense of it doesn't matter how people show up, what space they're in, whether they're a few minutes late or a lot late. Not that we encourage people being late because we really enjoy having everyone there, but sometimes these things just happen. And it's just a genuine acceptance, which I have to say is really foreign to me outside of that community. Often I don't get that level of acceptance and belonging.
Yeah, so thank you for naming that. I know one of the things that I've learned in my life through my experience is how much I appreciate flexibility and adaptability. That it allows there to be more of a coherent energy that can run. Um, and that makes such a huge difference.
Mm. Mm. So I'm really, in hearing that, I'm really getting a sense of the difference between the generations. Um, and that's probably one of the things that comes up so much in conversation around the millennials and the boomers and the Gen Xers and the Gen Ys and everyone doing things differently. But it's all about you're doing it wrong, and there's not that flexibility and adaptability of just fitting in with each other's way of perceiving and doing things.
Yeah.
Mm.
Finding the harmony between us. Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. Well, maybe that's what we should call this one, finding the harmony between us.
Let's rename it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so I know we have talked about this before, but I always like to revisit in case it's the first episode that somebody's watched. If someone does want to reach out and connect with the community, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, reach out to me on my website, Healing You Sanctuary. And there's two different options. You can, the first time, you can reach out and get a free consultation. That doesn't mean you can do it once a week. It's just one time you get the free consultation. And then there also is a free course that I just love. It's the Healing You Method. And it invites people to explore what it might be like to join a small group. And so that would be the other way to be able to reach out and to start to work with me and to work with community around these different kinds of subjects that we discuss.
I really like hearing you describe that today, because I just got a sense of the incremental steps there that work at the pace for people to actually move into things at the level that they are comfortable with, which is exactly what we were just talking about, making sure that everyone is actually met at the level that is right for them, so that they can have a sense of success and not feel triggered by a perception that they're wrong. But I never I wasn't present to that before, the way you've got those steps and the different ways of actually entering.
Yeah, thank you. The other thing that I would also like to put out there for people, if people are wanting to take a little bit more time before they reach out, then I also invite that. And so people might want to subscribe to Gloria Lybecker on YouTube. I have my own channel, and I have several different podcasts or shows that they could get to explore. The one here, The Healing You with Gloria Lybecker, or there's The Healing You Method with Gloria Lybecker. And I also have one called Healing Conversations with Gloria and Ingrid, with a colleague out of New Zealand. And so I just want to have lots of pockets of resources for people. And so just to tune in and find out what really does resonate with you, and to follow that and trust your own inner rhythm. That's the most important. Yeah.
That is a lot of resources. Yeah. And fantastic resources too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. It's always so much fun. We could just talk for hours.
And so I will see you next week. I don't think we've decided on our topic for next time, but I'm sure it will be a juicy one.
Yeah, we'll see you then. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.